Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm Chantel Perry. I'll be moderating this session today. This session is a new vision for supporting frontline staff to improve housing outcomes for people experiencing homelessness. So we'll have three presentations today. We have Chris Moss, Executive Director, London Cares Homeless Response Services, and Becca Hazel, Harm Reduction Worker. The second presentation will be by Kristen Kennedy, the second presentation will be by Jenny Conkin, Commendation Minister, Vets Affairs, President and Co-founder, Whole Way House. And then our third and final presentation will be Kristen Kennedy, Manager of Transition Services with Shalom Mission, and Lindsay Enns with Shalom Mission as well. We'll do the three presentations and then we'll take questions. So please save your questions to the end and then we'll have the panel answer directly. And we will start with Chris.
Hello, this is a very full room. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, awesome. So my name is Becca Hazel. I am a harm reduction worker. I work with Regional HIV and AIDS Connection. I work at the Safe Consumption site there, and then I also work with the Addiction Medicine Consult Service in the hospital. Today we're going to be talking about learning from your frontline teammates. So building empathetic leadership who can understand their teams and work with their teams. I think I got this. So thank you. So I was also a part of something put on by the City of London. It's called Health and Homelessness, the Whole Community Response. This was started from a protest that took place. We were seeing people dying, we were seeing grief, we were seeing burnout, and we were all experiencing it massively. We were seeing our friends in such distress that they couldn't go to work every day. We were seeing our friends on the street suffering more than they ever have before. So a protest was put out outside of City Hall by a collective of folks and then supported by other frontline workers as well. And through that came the city saying, okay, we need to listen. We need to have a coordinated response. We need to talk about these things because we don't know, we're not hearing what you're saying. So there has to be a better way to bridge those gaps. And through that, there was advocacy for there to be a frontline table. So a table of folks who do the work, interact every day with the populations that we serve, and hear that feedback. So there's something came out about it called the workforce table. So that table was a collective of individuals who were doing the work that got together and shared our experiences. Upon sharing our experiences, we thought, what can we do about this? How can we make change? How can we be heard in productive ways? So this work has been undergone for 2.5 years now. The table met monthly for 2.5 years. It had alternating amounts of individuals there, all from different organizations across the city. We're from the City of London, and then from the surrounding places as well. So there was key themes that came out of the research that came out of it. So we saw moral distress. So we saw the contrasting ethical values of what we were told to do and what we know is right to do. We saw policy and resource constraints. We saw policies that we didn't agree with that we had to enforce. We saw things that we weren't consulted on. So we were having to enforce these policies, but we didn't believe in them. So it was just causing so much injury. And so from that, the feedback was that we need to be consulted in safe ways. We need to be consulted as your staff for when you're putting new programs in, for when policies are coming out, for when new things are developing, winter responses. These staff need to be brought into the conversation because we do the work every day. We do the work safely, and we need to be able to give that feedback so that we can also feel good in the work that we're doing. That's how you create a safe space for those who access your services and those who are demonstrating those services. And the next theme that we saw was resources. So a limit of resources for those we serve for frontline, of resources for those we serve and for frontline. So we don't have resources to refer folks to, but we ourselves also don't have the resources that we need. So we don't have like peer networks. We didn't have places that we could safely go and talk about what we experience day by day. And then we also weren't, as a larger collective, we weren't gathering, we weren't sharing information, we weren't sharing healing practices, we weren't sharing our grief with one another. So we were all siloed, and those silos just created harm, created weird team dynamics because we weren't outreaching, we were only relying on each other, but we were all experiencing the same things. And something that the table helped reach is that we were able to do that networking, but we were also able to have space to be able to have those conversations. Another thing was safety, so the physical, emotional, cultural and mental safety. So that's something that we needed reflected in our workplaces that we were feeling like lackluster about. So we needed safe spaces to share. We needed to acknowledge the power and privilege within those spaces of having those conversations of this is what you need to implement into policy. Another theme was tenure, so the restraint of having to train and retrain staff because of the large amount of turnover. So the folks that were constantly coming and going to different organizations or quitting the field entirely, but you had very select senior staff that would have to train those folks every single time. And there wasn't adequate training resources. There wasn't training protocols. There wasn't the investment into those individuals to be able to build their skills so that they didn't have to train and retrain, so that that individual didn't have to train every single staff that came through those doors, because everybody burnt out within 2 or 3 years. And that staff that has been there for 7 years is also burning out, but they're training 20, 30 people every time something new happens, or every time somebody gets burnt out and somebody else needs to replace them. Major keynote that we heard as well was compensation. So folks weren't being compensated adequately or equitably. We weren't having the growth opportunities. We weren't having the benefits that met the needs that we were advocating for. Every individual has so many complex needs, and one individual package isn't going to meet all of those. So somebody's going to find different work somewhere else because their needs aren't being met, and they need to be able to have benefits that reflect those. And then lastly was retention. Something that we heard often from leadership was, how do I retain staff? How do I make it so that I don't have to train and retrain everybody every couple months or every couple years because they burnt out? That retention is capacity and skill building, investing into your staff, asking your staff what skills that they want to develop, what skills do they want to see reflected in their program. And then having the patience, the time, availability, support, feeling valued, connected, included. So having those feedback sessions with your staff and with the folks that you serve to be able to hear, this is what we want to see reflected in the program. This is what isn't working. This is what is working. And this is how we can change. That being heard piece is so key, because if people are heard and they're supported and they're seeing those changes reflected in what they do every day, then they're going to be more inclined to get up and come to work because they're not having that distress, they're not having that burnout. So in doing the workforce table, in talking to leaders, what the workforce table was is we put together information. There's zines at the front here. These zines were created from the workforce table feedback. It's a series of 4 called Nothing About Us Without Us. This series was distributed to all the leaders in the community. It was collectively put together by everybody at the frontline table and all of their feedback as well. So if you want to come up afterwards and grab some, there's enough to go around. We're talking about the experiences at the workforce table, being the person that was a co-chair that had to go and take this to the leadership. There was a lot of barriers. There was a lot of walls up, a lot of reluctancy to change. There was holistic things that they could do to incorporate into their policies and practices. And oftentimes all we heard was, we don't have the funding, we don't have the funding. But holistic stuff starts with that interpersonal level. So we were seeing people using funding and using capacity as sort of an excuse, but we weren't seeing how to overcome those. We weren't seeing, okay, if I can't do this thing, I can do 3 other things that are no cost, no budget. You just team building. It's capacity building, and it's holistic practices that you can share amongst each other. We also felt disregarded. So sometimes being a frontline worker, oftentimes folks with lived and living experiences as well, we would bring this feedback and it would be disregarded. It would be, she's a burnt out worker, she's a disgruntled employee, she's upset, she's not professional. And those feelings resonated deeply in the feedback that we received, but it also resonated in why people get so discouraged in advocacy as well. We get discouraged because we're seen as lesser than. I get paid lesser than, for sure, but I show up every day and I do the work because I'm passionate, and I do the work because I know what I'm doing and I love what I'm doing. And I want to be able to share that at the leadership level and be able to have my feedback and also the feedback given to me by folks with lived and living experiences, folks that we serve every day, being able to take that feedback and give it to the leadership, see it reflected in my programming, see it reflected in the work that I do every day, and being able to wake up and go to work.
Amazing. So about a year ago, I started this new job. I was the executive director of London Care's Homeless Response Services. Some of my team is here, as you can tell. I had worked in social services for a very long time, pushing about 30 years. And so I walked in, I had been a professor at the university, I taught leadership. I have worked in healthcare as a leader. I ran supportive housing and outreach programs. I was a consultant, a leadership consultant for 10 years. I had worked in both unionized and non-unionized settings. And so a year ago, when I came to London Cares, and one of the first meetings I had with the whole of community response, and I got to meet people like Becca, I was learning to listen to what the frontline was saying, because everything I knew about leadership and everything I taught in these textbooks wasn't working, and I couldn't understand what was going on. So I started to pay attention and listen. And as I was listening, I was hearing what the frontline was saying to me slowly. It took me a while because I'm really thick. So a lot of leaders in here, it's going to take us time, but we have to pay attention. I was hearing things like, I'm afraid of getting in trouble. I heard a lot like, people burn out in 2 years. I heard things like, our frontline staff use the food bank. I was hearing things like, I have ADHD and the chaos of our environment in the office is too much and it's overstimulating. Can you get us some silent space? A whole bunch of really interesting things that I had not heard of before, including our mental health supports don't work. Our EAP, when I go to the EAP person, I have to console them after they listen to my stories. I heard things like, as a leader, I felt excited that we had paid private other nonprofits to come in and support during debriefs after overdoses or deaths. But then learning that those debriefs can be weaponized against them, because if they show up as burned out or scared or having a problem and the leaders find out, it can be demoralizing. It can be used as progressive discipline, and they can eventually use it as an excuse to get rid of people. So I was learning all of these things. And in my head, I'm like, okay, we have human resources. We have to be compliant in these things. But these things go against everything I'm hearing these staff tell me. How do I do this? And I was really trying to figure it out. And it took me a very long, I was slow, right? Allie's face. I'm slow. I was a slow learner, but it took a lot just to kind of piece it together, because also jumping into an epidemic in the drug crisis, jumping into a housing crisis, jumping into, 2 years they've already been meeting at Whole of Community. 4 years or 5 years after COVID, and I don't know how y'all lived through that because I'm hearing the stories. I was fresh, I was new, and I was excited. And I was told in my very first week, I need to meet people where they're at. So I had to dial back my excitement and meet them with the energy that they were meeting me. And I couldn't figure out how to do that. It was really tough. So much to learn. And I really was thankful to the workforce table because meeting some of these folks really taught me leadership needs to be done differently. So a few things we did just really quickly off the top. They immediately needed more pay. Immediately within my first 3 months, there was raises. And I just figured it out. Funding can't be an excuse. We had some surpluses over here. We had some other things over here. I just said, let's figure it out. And we put our leaders to the table and they figured it out. We also needed to make it equitable. So we had relief staff and we had full-time staff, and they were making different rates of pay, but they do the same work exactly on a shift. So I couldn't understand that. So we started paying everyone equally. We increased the benefits a little bit. We changed things like they used to weaponize some things, like probationary periods were 6 months long. And if you got a leadership role, you went back on a probation period for 6 months, which seems, again, like penalizing people. We also had performance tied to pay. And although the HR books will tell you that's a really smart way to do it, when you work in survival mode and you can barely get your performance appraisals done and you're delaying people's increases for that reason, I just had an ethical issue with it. So we changed policies. We now do all our policies together at our senior leadership table, and it's not one person dictating the policies of the organization. We do it as a collective. We also created wellness rooms for people to have quiet space and to be able to de-escalate or to be able to calm, or have people with ADHD get rid of the overstimulation. And it's really nice. There's nice lighting. It's very soothing. People tend to hang out there quite a bit. There's so much more to do. I'm really starting to research how restorative justice fits with HR and how you can, instead of being the punitive approach to HR, you can start doing a growth and learning approach to that. We're just starting down that road, and I have lots more to learn. But one thing I just wanted all of you to know is, as leaders, there is other conversations we can have. Don't be stuck in policy and process and the way you always do business. Learn to flip it upside down. Bring your frontline staff around you and make decisions together. It really does work. Some of the biases that came up along the way were very real for me. I would say I probably had a lot of these when I walked in the front door, unknowingly. And I quickly started to learn that these aren't true. So frontline does not mean less skilled. In fact, they are amazing. The knowledge in the group of people well outperforms your leader's knowledge. They're too close to the client. So I have to admit, I was worried about boundaries. I learned about, what is the word, enmeshment? I'd never heard of that word before when I started. And it concerned me. But now I see the benefits to some of that with boundaries. And you have to work together to figure that out, right? That they're just replaceable. Oh, they burn out in 2 years, I heard. So we just hire more people. That doesn't feel right to me. They don't see the bigger picture. Often with leaders, we're like, oh, you can't think strategically. It's, you shouldn't be at this table. Also, completely not true. Burnout is a weakness. This is so dangerous because as an organization, if we are creating an environment in which they're burning out, it's our fault. And how can we organizationally change the dynamic within the space to care and support? They resist change. I have to say, I did feel that at the beginning, change avoidance and not wanting to change. That doesn't mean they don't want to change. It actually means you need to slow down and think and bring them along with you and actually make it their idea, like listen to their ideas and do what it is that they know is right. Hierarchy, I have so much I could talk about with hierarchy, but it isn't great. It is more authoritarian, and to learn to sort of flatten in a way where you can bring people together is a much more productive way to organize. And then the difference between the lived experience and the learned experience. We hear that a lot as well. What school did you go to? What degree do you have? Some of the people on my team with lived experience are so smart, and to devalue that is really punitive and uncalled for. That's just my current personal opinion. So I just want to encourage all the leaders to think differently, flip things upside down that you think you know, and talk to your staff as much as you can. And Becca has more to say.
These are like discussion or takeaway questions about like leadership, about your leadership, about being able to take something away from this and reflect and see how your organization does it and how you can change based on the things that you've learned at this conference. I've already learned so much. So first question is, when I think about skills of frontline, what do I value? An additive question is like, how do I increase that value? How do I increase their skills so that they see their value as well and can take that value on with them throughout life? Do I ever assume frontline staff are too close to the people they serve to make good decisions? This is something that staff with lived and living experience will interact with often because they've lived that life. Sometimes they know those people. So that too close is really a conversation. How might the assumption of being too close dismiss the expertise they gain from daily lived realities of homelessness? What do you do to invest in your frontline? What's the compensation, training, benefits, extras, investments, EAPs? What are things that you do to make your frontline feel valued? What are things that you do to make your frontline's life enriched from working for you? What does investing in your workforce look like? Are you investing in them personally with your presence? Are you asking how they are? Are you connecting with them on a person-to-person level? That team building isn't just for the front line. The team building is also leadership, team building with their staff so that they can work collectively and collaboratively. And then what does your staff burnout look like? Do your staff have the tools to work with burnout, and how do you support it? What are the dangers of burnout? What are the dangers that you've seen take place in your organization? When staff show fatigue or burnout, do I see it as a personal weakness or as a system or leadership issue? What is my role in building conditions that prevent burnout? Where do you see biases showing up at the organizational level? So where are the biases in your policies, in your communications, in your pay equity? How might these biases affect recruitment, retention, and morale? How do your staff feel about these biases? Are they seeing them? How are you receiving feedback about them? And then what steps can leadership take to actively counteract? And then write down, this is like a mission for today, write down one specific behavior you will change this month to reduce bias towards frontline staff, and share it with the group or share it with a friend. Attachment there. Okay, so that's a discussion that I hope takes place afterwards. We'll be up here afterwards as well to engage in some of these questions. Thank you so much. There's so many people in here. I appreciate it.
And next we have Jenny from Holway House.
Hi. Ooh, that's right there. There's some empty seats in case some of the people at the back, I see you've been standing for so long. There's one up here. I think there's one over there. My name is Jenny, and I'm the president and co-founder of Holway House. We support vulnerable seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities in Vancouver and Victoria. My brother and I first started the organization when we were managing our grandparents' SROs in the downtown east side. And we saw that there was such a need for healthy connection, purpose, and healthy support services. So that's how we started our program. But throughout that time, since then, we've expanded our services. And through COVID, which was very difficult, supporting seniors. We saw that actually our staff weren't burning out, and we had great retention rates as other counterparts and colleagues were sharing their experiences with me. So we decided to take a look into what was happening. Oh, I gotta set my timer. Also, just so you know, I have a slide at the end with a QR code for you. This is actually a 5-module training session that we received a funding grant to do. And so it's free access that you can take back to your teams, do it as a group or do it on your own for your management staff or any staff really. So I will go through, this is like usually a 90-minute presentation, so I will go very high level with this. But we received a grant from the Government of Canada, and we surveyed 14 different organizations in BC and to really identify what was the issue, what were staff facing. The key takeaways for staff dissatisfaction were around managers are complaining to me about other staff. I have had that happen. I trust the administration to hire people who match our company's culture. I receive appreciation publicly. My team has an overall positive attitude, not full of complaining, gossiping, and actually complimenting each other. Again, these are the dissatisfaction areas, and my managers intentionally set time aside to give me constructive feedback about my work and growth opportunities. And so we wanted to look at what do we do or what can we do to counteract these areas. So I'm just going to challenge you really quickly, especially if you are a leader in this room. Sometimes I'm a founder, and so when people give me feedback, it's like you're calling my baby ugly, essentially. And so I have to stop and pause and say, okay, is it me? Is the problem me? And so I really appreciate you sharing that. Come into it with an open mind. Don't listen for your boss or the president of your organization or the board. Listen for yourself. What can I take away? And again, this is not easy work. If it was a quick fix, everybody would be doing it. So just looking at that long-term small changes that can create incremental growth. And let's change what we can control. So I'm going to look at recruiting, retaining, and releasing. And I'll go very quickly and very high level. So with recruiting, we focus very much of our energy on that initial recruitment and training process, because if we can be proactive, it's going to save a lot of people a lot of time and effort and money. And so we are very intentional about how we hire. We do really look for those soft skills. I can teach people the physical skills or the how we do our online logs and things like that. That's very simple. The part is the compassion, consistency. Actually, I have a little list right here. For us, these are our values, our 6 C's. We look for compassion, consistency, character, charisma, culture, and community. But for your organization, you can make your own 6-letter alliteration, which I get made fun of all the time by my staff that I just like to make these things. But it's really important to us. So when we build our interview questions, we base them on these and see if that person would be a good fit for us. Okay, so we often attract certain types of people to our organizations and nonprofits. So especially in housing, what are some of the positive traits of people that we attract? You can just yell it out. Come on. Dedicated, empathy, compassion, caring. Yes. What are some of the negative counterparts to that? So, oh, come on. I was trying to make it that cool slide where like the words pop up. It didn't work. I'm not good at these. So let's say compassionate. If we start leaning into burnout, that often can become cynical, right? Where, I've been trying to change things so much and it's not working. It never works, and we become cynical. I find that creative people, passionate people, myself included, are very impatient. I want this to happen right now. We're change makers. We don't get into this because we want things to stay the same. We want to see that change. But that can lead to sensitivity. That can lead to, again, that impatience. We're helpers, but sometimes that can lead to that bleeding heart syndrome. And so we really want to identify those and see if we can not see them. These are not weaknesses, but how do we grab the good out of that so that we're not leaning into that cynicism or impatience, or my favorite, going rogue, when we have somebody who just, it's like, my way is better, and leaves and goes that way. And so that's how we recruit. In the online video, I believe we actually go through interview questions. There's a full training session in there as well. For retaining, we look at how do we build fireproof teams. So we talk a lot about burnout. Thank you for the wonderful setup. But how do we become fireproof ourselves? How can we work at creating systems for our teams that they have what they need to be resilient, but also to have the space to find safety. And so for us, we want to look first and foremost, again, when we're as leaders, what are we doing to create that environment? I call this the martyr mentality. I found this meme. Normalize saying, wow, it seems like you really need to work on your time management skills to people who are always bragging about how long they work. I had to look at myself as a by nature workaholic and not like how many of us are bragging about not taking breaks or it's so crazy busy at work or this is not supposed to be like a badge of honor. And as leaders, I'm setting the tone. If I'm sending emails at midnight, or this is my identity, how busy I am. I'm so busy. And if we equate that with like success or with how big the organization is getting or those types of things, that's actually setting such a terrible tone for the organization. And we see it not only in the nonprofit, obviously when you ask somebody, how are you doing? When was the last time somebody said, really rested, actually, feeling great. Like we don't hear that. We hear, I'm so busy. Oh my goodness. And so we want to just take that away. We work really hard as leaders in my organization to do that. And then fight or flight is actually a good thing. It's a great response mechanism that we have, but it's short term. It's supposed to be for the short term. And I think we saw this especially in COVID, 2 weeks, 2 years. And so when we see if we're always in crisis mode, we're actually extending our fight or flight mode into bringing it home, into just living in fight or flight or freeze at all times. And so as a leader, it was important to me to take a look at this and say, if I'm sending those emails at midnight or if I'm working late hours, that's what they see. There was actually a really great story. I'm going to tell you really quickly. There was some organization in Japan, it was like Sony or Toshiba, a large tech organization. And they learned that if you gave people rest time, like nap time at work, that they were actually exponentially more productive and like, let's do this. We want to make more money. So they tell everyone we've installed nap rooms for you or pods, these cool looking pods. And they're like, great, go take naps. We want you to be really well rested so you can make us more money. And they found after a couple of months, nothing was happening. Sales weren't going up. They weren't making more money. People weren't taking naps. Why? And they're like, okay, maybe they want more privacy. Maybe they're embarrassed. So we'll build rooms. We'll actually have nap rooms. And they invest all this money and they do it. And still, nobody's taking naps. They're not making more money. They're getting mad. Leadership is like, what's going on? Why aren't you doing this? And suddenly they start investigating. And why was nobody taking naps? The leaders weren't taking naps. So nobody else did. And so they wasted all this money. I would like to install a nap room, by the way, at Holway House. I've been fighting for this for a while. But I had to start saying, I'm going to walk out of the office at 5 o'clock. And on my way out, I look at my team, hey, are we leaving? You want to walk out together? Do you want to walk? And I try to really normalize that to say, it's home time, like let's go. Because I want my team to be healthy. What is the point in running a charity to help people be healthy if my own team aren't healthy? I'm being completely hypocritical. So this was really important to me that we help people be able to step out of the crisis. So how do we step out of the crisis? I came across this quote in a journal. Expressing gratitude is associated with a host of mental and physical benefits. We know this mentally. Studies have shown that feeling thankful can improve sleep, mood, and immunity. Gratitude can decrease depression, anxiety, difficulties with chronic pain, and risk of disease. If a pill could do this, everyone would be taking it. So how can we implement gratitude into our day-to-day lives? Because we have a lot of things that we are fighting with, that we're struggling with. So it does have to be quite intentional. We actually have a social enterprise called the I Get To Legacy Project, which I don't have time to tell you about, but it's amazing. When my dad was diagnosed with cancer, he said, I turned all my I have tos into my I get tos. So what are some of the things that we can be grateful for, and how can we actually practice gratitude with our teams? And then often we feel helpless. There's these big systems, especially our frontline workers might feel that they can't change. I feel I can't change systems. So what can I do when I feel helpless? And I really appreciate that you identified that. I might not be able to do this thing, but I can do 3 other things. And so how do we focus on that? And then recognizing and really reminding our teams, we are supporters. We are not saviors. How do we look at the things that we're doing that are making a difference? And you can't give what you don't have. So just really encouraging people to refill their cups. This pervasive positive perspective is huge, and we've seen such a difference. We have a zero tolerance policy on no gossiping, or on gossiping. You can't gossip. Don't gossip. I had an experience when I was young working in restaurants, and I, heard whispering, and I was very insecure, and I just felt like people were gossiping. And then a manager came and gossiped to me about another employee, and I was like, well, if you're doing it about them, what are you saying about me? And I fully lost trust, and I quit. Little did I know they were planning on, giving me raises and increase. And I was like, I'm done. I was already like scared and bitter and frustrated. We've also learned that what you water grows. So the more we focus our energy on these negative things, these gossipy attitudes, we're not helping our teams grow. And then we want to offer those safe spaces where don't hold it in, but also don't blurt it out. There's a time, place, person. How do we express this? How can we share our concerns and complaints? And then we say complaint up. Because every person lights up the room. For some, it's when you walk in, and for others, it's when you walk out. So I'm just going to say, little self-reflection. There are days where I know I'm the person who does not light up the room, like they're waiting for me to leave. And I have to take accountability for that and just really ask myself, am I contributing to the health of my organization and my team? I can't do the work that we do without them. And so I catch myself complaining. I catch myself getting frustrated, whether it's with government, a system, another organization, a staff member. How do I look at that and how do I deal with that and reframe it? So just for your own personal reflection, what's one of your flammable traits? Maybe it's not taking breaks. Maybe it's not leaving work on time. Maybe it's sending emails at midnight. I learned a secret. You can hit schedule send. Oh! It's my favorite thing. So everybody gets 50 emails right at 8 a.m. Sorry about that. I do a lot of my thinking at midnight. All right, so retaining staff, again, accountability. This is a cornerstone of trust. And there's a whole fleet of teaching in the video series about how do we holding people accountable is what builds trust. If I see that this person isn't being held accountable to the same standard that I am, or that I'm giving my all, and this person isn't, and there's never that accountability, or this doesn't get discussed, it's a very frustrating feeling, and that's when bitterness can set in. So we follow a see it, say it, fix it culture. That means something's wrong, somebody didn't do their checklist, whatever that is, we don't make it a big, huge deal. Just see it, say it, fix it. Hey, this didn't get done last night. Did something happen? Ask those questions. How can I support you? What is needed? If this is a habit, how do we sit down and work on that together? Unfairness, whether it's with our clients or our teams, unfairness leads to bitterness. And bitterness and resentment are very hard to come back from, if possible at all. All right, I'm just going to give you, this is a fun thing you can take away. For our team meetings, I had to be very intentional. I hire people who want to make a change. And when I first started, as an entrepreneur, I want to make a difference. I want to see a difference. I want to know that what I'm doing is working. And I had to come out of that savior mentality, but I had to start celebrating the wins. I had donors and funders coming to me, well, what are your numbers? And how many people are this? And how many people that? And I was like, Mark took a shower this week. That was my big win. And I was so excited. And that was a win. And they didn't see it that way. But I knew once I had a staff of 20, I was like, they also see that as a win. And they know they've been working with a client so hard and caring for themselves and having enough personal value to take care of themselves. And so we start our team meetings with shout outs. First of all, recognizing people publicly in 1 or 2 sentences makes a huge difference. Allowing them space to recognize each other publicly, even better. So you are allowed maximum 2 sentences, maximum. You just shout it out. Thank you so much for helping me yesterday put the coffee out. I was running behind and I really appreciated you stepping in. That's it. You get to shout out. It has to be specific and short. Otherwise it becomes big. I love my whole team and they're so great. And now nobody is. Nobody's getting nothing. Make it count. Yays. So we celebrate the wins, the bigs and the smalls. So we have 9 different sites. Most of my staff don't get to see the other sites, but they can celebrate the wins together. So we call this our yay. What is your yay for your site? One person shares the yay. And again, it could be that Mark took a shower this week, or we had somebody new come to the program who's never been before, and we saw them having coffee with someone and they made a connection. Great. This reminds us that there is change happening, that there are good things happening. And even if maybe you had a hard week, you get to share in the entire team's win. And then our praise or our care, because I like things that rhyme, yays and praise, our cares and concerns. Create a space where people can bring forward with a team who understands. When I first started, most of my friends were like hairdressers and servers, and they would complain to me like, oh my goodness, my boss was yelling at me today, or this lady didn't like her hair and her highlights. And I was like, my client died before I got to the hospital and I didn't get to say goodbye. And I was like, I didn't know where to share this or who to express this to. And now I have a team of people that I can share that with, and I want them to be able to share that with me and with each other. So we make space in our team meeting. We put it out there. Is there anything that it's out of our control and we just need to release it somewhere? And so this is that space. And then we get into business. Most of our business really can be in an email. Let's all be honest. This is our time to celebrate together and show support to each other. And then our staff development session. So our one-on-ones, very simple. Actually learned this in the restaurant industry. What's going well? What's not going well? Sorry, I start this meeting by putting a timer on my phone. I put my phone away. Don't look at my phone. I don't interrupt. I don't speak at all. And I wait until they're done. So what's going well? What's not going well? What do you need or desire? What do you need or desire could be, I need a new laptop. It takes me 15 minutes to log into my account. Or it could be, I need to know, like, am I going somewhere in this organization? Or I need more training. I feel really ill-equipped. It could be anything that they want to talk about. And then, my turn, would you like my feedback? I've never had anybody say no yet, but I want to understand that this is us together. Whew, time is going very fast. All right, getting buy-in. I do not have time to tell you why this sponge is on here, but it is in the videos. But if we can explain the why to people when we have a policy that might feel frustrating to them, or like they're not sure why, or you notice that somebody's not doing their task, taking that moment to just explain the why. Why is it so? Okay, I'm telling you the sponge really quick. Okay, the sponge is because I had an employee who every time I would go into the site, there was a dirty, gross sponge. And we have a sign above the sink that says, thank you so much for washing your dishes so that our clients are set up for success. And it drove me crazy. And I was like, he doesn't care. And I was getting bitter and I was getting frustrated. I wasn't saying, fix it. Sorry, photographer, I move my hands a lot. And I was getting so frustrated with him, but he didn't know the reason why. And once I explained to him, when I first started working in SROs, it was really difficult because people felt like the system was stacked against them. You're expected to wash your dishes, but there's no tool there to do it. So when there's not a sponge on the sink, I want to fire you. And he's like, oh. And I was like, okay, are we good? I've never walked into that setting. People at Whole House know not having a sponge on the sink is a fireable offense. I'm very passionate about it. Giving leaders fences, letting them work within them, showing them trust, make them clear, and then just have thorough training. All right. I can't get into retraining and releasing, but you got to sometimes release people as a gift to them as well as to your team. I came across this quote, the easiest way to lose your high performers is to let them clean up after your low performers. And it's so difficult when we don't hold people accountable. Amen. Again, that bitterness, that resentment, I come into work, you said it, I'm passionate. I'm here to do this work because I love it. I want to be a part of it. And my manager is not holding the other person accountable and I'm picking up the pieces for them, or nothing is being done. And us as leaders need to have those hard conversations. If you've ever been a landlord, eviction when I first started was so difficult for me until I realized if I don't evict this person, they're putting everybody else at risk and the other tenants feel that I don't care about them. So it was actually a gift to the 84 other tenants that this one person, unfortunately, wasn't able to comply with the rules, was creating safety problems, whatever that was. And of course, we do retraining, we work with people, but if we're not holding them accountable, we will lose our top performers. We will lose the people who are passionate and care about this work. So this is the QR code. I will put it on my laptop after as well. But there's 5 videos. I think they're about 30 minutes each. And there's even like PDFs for your teams to follow along. It's a really great training session. And then these are some of the books that we use as well with our teams for training. And I went 1 minute over. I'm so sorry. But that is what we do at Whole House for healthy staff culture.
Right, and now we have Kristen and Lindsay.
Good afternoon. My name is Lindsay Enns, and I'm the Interim Director of Housing at Siloam Mission. And I've been there about 14 years, and I started as a caseworker many years ago. So that's a little bit about me.
And I'm Kristen Kennedy. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the interim manager of transition services. I've been at Siloam Mission for 13 years in a variety of roles. I've worked in the drop-in, I was a caseworker, I was a supervisor, and now I'm the manager. And both Lindsay and I feel really lucky to journey with this community. Sorry. I'm also just going to go ahead and do a land acknowledgement. So we're gathered on, this conference is being held on the Jojake, on the traditional unceded territory of the Ganigaha people, and they've lived on this territory since time immemorial. So just for a little bit of context on who we are, so we work at Siloam Mission, which is quite a large organization in Winnipeg, Treaty 1 territory. We have an emergency shelter, we have meals, we have clothing, hygiene, we have a multidisciplinary health center, which just recently launched our OAT treatment program, so shout out to them, that's fantastic. We have spiritual and cultural care. We have supportive housing at 3 different sites, and we have a casework team as well. And so we just want to acknowledge that our funding comes from End Homelessness Winnipeg through Reaching Home, and also through Siloam Mission, as we're primarily community funded. Our transition services team is composed of a manager, supervisor, admin assistant, we're so lucky, training lead, and up to 10 different caseworkers at a time. Also, just for context, caseworkers on our team carry participants in 2 main streams, so both in housing first and then also in prevention. And we find that this really helps to kind of break it up so that people have all of their participants in crisis at one time. So of course we're here because we lead teams and we care about good outcomes for our participants. And so we obviously know, I'm not going to spend time on this, but one of the major challenges in the field is retention. And it was actually last year at this conference that I learned that the average length of time spent in direct service in homelessness, can somebody guess, just shout out how many years? 2, 3, 6 to 18 months is what I learned at this conference last year. Wild. We know this has major impact on relationship with participants. So I've listed some of the challenges here. You're all like, I know, get to the good stuff. But our team, we recently held a staff survey in August where we explored kind of all sorts of topics, what people find helpful in leadership, what they find hard, opportunities for us to improve. And our findings were that 100% of our team members indicated that they do not plan to leave our team in the next 2 years. Win for us, yeah. So I just want to also say we're not coming to you as experts. We're just coming to you as people who have failed, tried something new, had a little bit of a success, and are now keeping on trying and learning and trying new things. But I do just want to highlight one thing here, which is the zone of fabulousness. I don't have time to get into it, but Vicki Reynolds, if you know her, she talks a lot about enmeshment and disconnection and how that's a form of burnout as well. So what do we do about all of our retention challenges?
Well, we all know that we're here because we want the best possible outcomes for our community members, for the folks experiencing homelessness. So we've learned we have to ask ourselves, well, what do we need in order for that to happen? So as a Housing First team, we know that to have better outcomes, we need to have better fidelity to Housing First standards. And the better that those are, the better outcomes we have for folks. So how do we get those good Housing First fidelity standards? Well, we have staff who know their jobs and who know how to do it well. And how can we get those staff who know how to do their job well? Well, we need to make sure that we have the staff that are the right fit and that they're well trained and supported. So intentionally, we've come up with these 3 things. Strong teams and great outcomes don't happen by accident. They're built with intentionality and careful work. Choosing the right fit for the role, coaching folks to be able to do the job well, and cultivating the team as we care for our staff. And you'll find a lot of what we share overlaps with our last 2 presentations as well.
I know, it was like copy paste. Okay, so choosing. So we wanted to highlight about how we choose our candidates. So we've all, don't look around if they're in the room, but we've sometimes experienced someone who's not the right fit in the right roles. And in our experience, it is way more work for us to have that person in the role than it is for us to just do the work ourselves. I'd rather just do the work myself, which is not healthy either. And so also not to mention the potential harm to participants, right? When you have the wrong person doing this role. And so we try to be clear on and assess for our values. So this is kind of our first practical. So for a long time, we were hiring based on skill sets. How long have you done housing first? How long have you done case management? Do you have experience in homelessness? All these things, right? And now we're like, no. As we've assessed where things have gone wrong, we've kind of tried to figure out, just like you were talking about, like those soft skills, we've identified what our values are in this framework. And so in our agency, our organizational values spell HEART, so holistic, equity, altruism, relationship, and truth and reconciliation. And Lindsay and I have decided what our kind of values are for transition services. So ours that we landed on are person-centered, trauma-informed, strengths-based, that's my fave, harm reduction, and housing first. So these are non-negotiable. So this is how we did it. And if you peek on the app, we have several handouts on there, but Lindsay's going to walk us through kind of an example of what we do next.
So one of our biggest wins in the last couple of years has been with the introduction of a second part to our interview process. At one point, it was a second interview. Now we've made it into one interview, just a second part, and it's a role play. So by this time, we've already done the traditional interview. They've answered a whole bunch of questions. They've told us what they know, what they've done in the past, or what they would do in a situation. And now it's time for them to show us. So an experienced staff plays the part of a program participant. You want someone who feels comfortable doing role plays. Otherwise, what's awkward is going to become even more awkward. And
it's not awkward at all. Trust me, guys.
It still will have some awkwardness. It's kind of like the elephant in the room. So it's one of those things where as we introduce it to the applicant, we say, we know this is going to be a little bit awkward, but we just are asking you to roll with it. One of the things as a caseworker, how often do you walk into awkward situations or situations you're not quite sure what to do about, right? So here's one of the things. How do they rise to the challenge in an awkward situation? Then we assure them and tell them it's going to be okay. We provide a little bit of a background information about a participant. Here you just have a snapshot, but on the app you'll see the full thing. And we sort of set the stage for a home visit and what the person would be walking into. So we've developed a scenario to sort of tease out some of the things that we're looking for. Things like, how do they implement a trauma-informed approach? What does harm reduction look like? We've learned it's helpful to have some props, AI-generated photos, an eviction notice or warning letter from a landlord, a sample letter from social assistance, those kind of things. Whatever sorts of things you work with normally, having some of those available. These bring some realness to the situation and provide a shared idea of what the scenario looks like. It might seem a bit simple, but there's a lot of things that can be learned from this part of the interview. One of the things is, can they walk the walk or can they walk the talk? Can they put into action those things that they've told you about that they have said that they can do? In this scenario, we add in a lot of different things going on for the participant. There's a lot of different issues or things that are arising for them. Is this applicant able to prioritize what's most important and urgent for right now? How about problem solving? What are their skills like in that? One of the roles for the staff playing the role of the participant is to kind of go off on a rabbit trail with one of their issues and kind of just like keep mulling over it over and over again, and to get upset about something in their situation. Maybe it's that worker from that system that they really are frustrated with. Is the applicant able to redirect the participant back to the goals that they're working on? Are they able to de-escalate in a way that feels good? The situation is based on real situations that we run into with participants. So is the applicant comfortable in walking through those types of issues and navigating how to have conversations about various things? Can they demonstrate the values that are important to us in the organization? Also, and probably most importantly, are the red flags. Sometimes these come up. We will have interviewed somebody and we think, hey, they are a great fit. We definitely want them. And then we get into this role play and suddenly we see them have some red flag behavior. So maybe they're taking a really directive approach. They're telling this person what they're going to do, how they're going to get there. They're doing this first and that second, all those kind of things. Maybe they're showing actually a lack of empathy and they're communicating judgment through their actions. Maybe they're taking an abstinence-based approach as a harm reduction program that doesn't work for us. So we also want to consider how the person who's playing the role of the participant, how do they feel after this interaction is all said and done? They kind of got to really get into that role and feel what it feels like to be that person, and how do they feel after that? It's often become sort of the make or break item for us. And like we've said, you can see the full attachment on the app.
All right, so the next part we're going to talk about is being intentional in your coaching by developing a strong onboarding and orientation. So, of course, now you've chosen your person that's right for your team, good for you. The temptation can be there to just throw them in, sink or swim. That's what I was told when I started. Lindsay obviously wasn't my boss at the time. That's how it goes, right? Sorry, that's social services. You'll just have to figure it out. Pause, play it forward. How is that going to affect your participants? No, you need to be really intentional about your strong onboarding and orientation process. I get it. You're short-staffed. There's pressures to add more participants to your caseload. We've been there. We've just learned to slow down, and it's okay. The coaching also continues, of course, throughout employment, through check-ins, et cetera, best practice in the field, matching interventions to participant stages of change, all those things. But we're talking in this section about kind of those first 3 to 6 months. So, of course, in your orientation, we've also uploaded our onboarding checklist to the app if you'd like to use that as a sample as well. So, of course, organization-wide, like where's your workstation, where are your office supplies, all those things, policies around confidentiality, safety, intros to others on the team and in the organization. For us, because we are a large homeless shelter with many, many different programs, we also incorporate shadow shifts into other departments. So that is organization-wide. Doesn't matter what position you hold. You're meant to do, you can tell me if you work at Siloam if this has actually happened, but you're meant to do a kitchen shift, a drop-in shift, a shelter shift, a clothing room shift to better understand how the services work that our participants navigate. And this also is very important because it builds the concept of being part of a larger team and reduces siloing, which is super important. In our department, our orientation also has a pathway document where we kind of outline important steps in the casework flow or relationship. Of course, it's not like it's not always followed to a T, but program pathways. Don't forget to get consent. Don't forget to book a mover, all those things. Actually, we are the movers, just kidding. Procedure manual, which is our holy book of what to do when to get things, where to get things, how to get things, resources available, intro to the team, admin items, mileage reporting, documentation, all that good stuff. This is a really important tip. If you have the capacity to add a training lead to your team, I would highly recommend.
It's not another staff position.
Not another staff position. So let me explain. So we've used it as a term position during onboarding with extra pay for extra responsibility. So it's an existing caseworker on your team. Also, this builds leadership capacity into your team and keeps things interesting. So we basically follow the I do, you watch, I do, you help model. But this person is somebody who embodies your department values and is an exemplary caseworker. They have their own full caseload. They bring trainees to their appointments. They delegate shadow opportunities to other workers. So if they know you have somebody's prepping for a bed bug treatment, they might say, oh, can you bring the new hire to your bed bug prep appointment? So that's really important. They contribute to probationary evaluations as well. They give regular feedback to both new staff and leadership. And they're also responsible for ensuring that our fieldwork training checklist is complete, which we've also uploaded on the app for you. Yep, okay, you're good.
So to develop this fieldwork checklist, as we call it, we asked ourselves a few questions. What are the typical casework activities that staff in this role do? Then we made a list, and then we asked the training lead to go through it every week based on the interactions that they had with that new hire. We also asked the trainee to go through it at the very beginning to kind of give an idea what they come to us with, what kind of levels of confidence, and then also each week as they go, so we can see the areas that they're providing a bit more growth in. So we know that not all these things will be completed in 3 months, in a 3-month probationary period. Honestly, to train a caseworker, we're really looking more like 6 months to a year. But usually 75% of these particular tasks we find can be shadowed or seen in the first 3 months. And then whatever hasn't been done, then we really make note of those things to make sure we pair that person up with a caseworker later when that thing arises. Like, for example, you might not have somebody going to jail every single month to go and visit somebody. You either have a participant who's went to jail or you don't. Same with having somebody who has a child involved in the child and welfare system. You either have that or you don't. So sometimes those things take a little bit longer, but we kind of keep that on the radar so that if somebody's 2 years into the job and then they get their first participant with a child and they suddenly seem really awkward, but they don't want to say, like, actually, I've never worked with the Child and Family Services before. Like, we want to have that on our radar, that we know that. Okay, that's fine. We'll pair you up with Susie over here, who's done that a lot. Then secondly, this is the same list, same items, but it's for the applicant or the new hire, I guess, at this point. And for them, it's not so much when they've done it, it's how comfortable do they feel with these things. So even if they've done it a lot of times, they might still feel kind of unsure. And then we are able to have conversations about that. Do they actually lack the skills, or is it just like building up some confidence? It also helps us to identify sometimes when an applicant or a new hire, sorry, I'm getting my language mixed up, when the new hire feels really confident about something, but then the training lead has seen them do that thing and they're like, they could really use some more support with that, right? So then that's where, as leadership, then getting into a conversation, getting curious about why is this difference coming up here?
Lastly, we want to talk about cultivating and creating an intentional culture of care. I try to be a plant lady, but the problem is that I water all my plants, all my different plants at the same time, and then some of them die because they're overwatered. And then Lindsay says, that's not how you do that. And I say, okay. And so it's the same for your team. So the best support for your team is person-centered, what they need. So we're taking those same approaches that we're looking for from our caseworkers to their team, and we are applying those to our staff as well. The best support for participants, which is why we are all here. I absolutely know that you are in this field not because you get paid a lot of money and because you love when your boss brings donuts on Fridays once in a while. It's because you care about participants getting good outcomes. That's why. And so for that to happen, for program participants to get positive outcomes, your staff have to feel cared for. They have to feel secure with you, and they have to be abiding by best practice. And so, of course, it doesn't hurt to bring in donuts on Friday. Please do that. And you can mail them to me in Winnipeg because I'm a donut girl. But living out those same values, applying them to your team, bringing a strengths-based, trauma-informed, person-centered approach. Recognizing that each staff has different challenges, different strengths. A good leader knows support does look different for each person. Another thing that we try to do to help cultivate a standard of care for our staff is insulating from external chaos, sometimes from internal chaos, frustration, conflict, whenever possible, and taking on some of those systemic challenges at the leadership level to avoid the feelings of hopelessness, of being stuck or not heard. And I really like what you said about complaining up. I think that's really important. I can be guilty of venting as much as the next person, but it's really important. Also, avoiding the red flag approaches that Lindsay talked about in that second part of the interview, in terms of being like judgmental or whatever toward their staff, right? Just be patient, kind. Also, what we talked about earlier, focusing on the things that are in our control. So we're both leaders that have started our career in direct service, and we know the pressures of the work and that so many things are outside of our control. If everything was dependent on us, there would be no problems because there is enough passion in the world to end homelessness, absolutely. But we know that there's so many things that are outside of our control. Even when we do things right, we don't always get the outcome that we want, of course. So we use this circle to remind ourselves. I have one on my wall. It's not aesthetic, but I have it on my wall. Our staff, our participants, to focus on the inner circle and spend your energy there. Of course, we also need to say the yes and, right? Yes and. Two things are true at the same time. Yep, you're working your hardest, and it's so frustrating when you don't get the outcome you want. This helps workers to feel heard and not to diminish their feelings.
So one of the ways that we do this is by looking at the expectations put on staff. We realize we need to redefine what success looks like. It isn't all about how many people got housed or got brand new jobs or went to school. With a person-centered approach, we know that success looks different for every person. We know that on each team, people are different. And So we do these things we call SIGPARs. I think you call them yays. It's the same sort of an idea, right? Looking for those things where something substantial has happened for someone. We make a list and then we share it with other staff in the organization. It also does come in handy. I'm the person who does the reporting for the team. And so some months when I'm reporting, maybe nobody did get new housing. Maybe we were just able to keep some of them in housing, and that's a huge accomplishment, but sometimes it's not seen that way by the funders. So being able to add in a few other things of what we saw not only helps the team, but also helps feed up through the funding system for them to acknowledge that there's a whole lot more going on than just those numbers. So for example, a few of the significant participant accomplishments from last month include someone being 5 weeks substance free and celebrating with them on their decision and their work around that. Someone who has trouble paying their rent on time paid it for 3 months in a row on time and in full. That's amazing. Another participant with high anxiety agreed to leave their apartments to go on a field trip to the zoo with some others from the program. Those kind of things are amazing for those individual people. It might not be from one to another, but for that person, that makes a big difference. And sharing those things can really bring a sense of encouragement to the team as well.
Done here, but we just wanted to highlight a couple more ways that we prioritize staff wellness on our team. So we do have different kinds of check-ins. We have weekly briefings, the how are you check-ins, the file review check-ins to make sure that everything's up to date. But we also have open door time because we actually, which is most of the time, if we can, we have our doors open because we recognize that staff need to vent when they need to vent, and that's okay. Leadership participation in direct service. I've learned this from Lindsay. Lindsay would not hesitate if she had time to come scrub out an apartment with me when I was a caseworker. That wouldn't even be a consideration, of course. And so the idea is that servant leadership, I'm not going to do something that I expect you to do. I'm not going to say I'm too good for it. Of course, we're in it together. A wellness hour. So whatever. So a wellness hour, it's not on the books. It's just something we do in our team. So we do 1 hour a month for you for whatever fills your cup. So if that's you need an hour to go to counseling, sure. It can be paid work time. It's on the honor system, but we have an honorable team, so it's okay. If you want to go to the doctor with that time, great. You don't have to put in a sick time request. It's an hour a month for you to go to a yoga class, a gym class, go for a walk, whatever you do, it's paid work time, 1 hour a month. We have a culture of safety to learn. So we do field supervisions, of course, every month. So it's an opportunity for the caseworker to invite someone from leadership to come out with them to see them in action in the field. It's a time for us to celebrate them and identify areas of strength and also to provide some opportunities of some things to try differently next time. We also had a team day recently. I was just talking to Diana from West Central and she was saying, we need to go to a rage room. I was like, girl, we did that. You got to take your team to a rage room. We asked them what they wanted to do for a team day, and they said, can we go smash stuff? And I was like, yeah, we can. So we didn't tell some people that might be nervous about workers' comp things, and we went, and we had a wonderful time, and we blasted music, and it was awesome. And then after we went to somebody's house, we had a bonfire, and we passed around papers with people's names, and we shared specific things that we appreciate about each other. Gratitude. And then the last thing is work-life balance. So we try to be really flexible as a department. We're lucky. We're not like the drop-in where you have to be open at a certain time. You have to have a certain amount of people on the floor. Our meetings generally start at 9. Work starts at 8. If you have to drop off your kid at daycare, you can come at 8:30. That's fine, and just stay till 5. That's also fine. So we're trying to be flexible as much as possible so that when people are there, they can be focused. As long as it's communicated and consistent. So the goal is that there's no fear. Workers can show up as their authentic selves, that they have a commitment to assume the best about each other, that we communicate, we solve problems, we apologize, we fail forward. We've hired caseworkers that come with a lot of management trauma, and it's kind of sad. But when we have workers that are supported and show up, they put their best foot forward, and their participants will have better outcomes, and that's what we're all here for. And so we just want our folks to carry less mental clutter so that the participants can have their full attention. We can all get to the work of ending homelessness, not get caught up in the drama. So thank you for your time. Sorry, I think we went a little bit over, but thank you for listening.
Thank you. All right, now to the fun part of the presentation, just open panel questions. And we do have a roving microphone.
Hi, just a quick question for you about the table, the frontline table. How does that work operationally in regards to you're going to need support from leadership to bolster the table, get people the time off, but you don't want them to be so invasive that the frontline table doesn't feel like they're going to be able to achieve what they wanted to achieve. So can you just speak about that operationally? I'm just kind of, as a chair, like how that worked.
That was something tricky that we had to work out in the beginning because at the very beginning we had leadership and frontline coming to the table together. So it didn't create that sense of safety and openness that we wanted to curate. So it was a conversation with the leadership of, can you spare your frontline for a 1 to 3 hour meeting? Can you send them separately? And then there was like a leadership meeting as well so that they could still be included in the process and hear the feedback. But not be present for all of the feedback from the frontline table to create that safety. So it was the kindness of the leaders to be able to send their staff on paid time. We tried to get it funded, but it did not go through. They're okay.
I had a question for you guys, ladies. When you talked about the extra pay for the positions for training individuals, I know thinking on my team, we have so many strong individuals, and I could see that creating potential conflict about who gets that extra responsibility. Just wondering if you guys ever face that and how you would navigate that.
Yeah, that's a great question. We posted it as a term position, and so we gave equal opportunity to the staff to be able to apply. And then we had like 2 this last round, I think. And so we were able to give feedback to the other person as to like why they weren't chosen this time around. Then knowing that they want some leadership opportunities, and so looking for ways to be able to develop those as well. Yeah, we made it an open competition, just an internal posting.
Funny though, we did have people apply from other teams, so I was like, okay. But yeah, it was posted and they interviewed for it. Yeah.
So my question goes back to the frontline table because where I work, we actually have something similar. But what I've observed, and I'm off at the table because I'm not frontline anymore. But one of the things I observe is that we get stuck in the decision-making space and taking the conversations that are happening at that frontline table and mobilizing those into change in the workplace. Can you speak to a little bit of maybe how you approach the decision-making process, how you kind of overcame that hurdle of circular conversations and kind of convincing upwards to make practical changes?
That's a great question. So that was a challenge throughout the whole process as well, because it was a collective of folks that got together. There wasn't one leader specifically to implement change. So it was us as like the co-chairs going to the leadership table, giving them the feedback and just hoping that they would take the change. We did create like a process of accountability, I guess you could say, where leaders came back every meeting and shared what's changed, what do you need assistance with, what would you like to hear more from your frontline, and that way we could advise better so that we could see those changes. A lot of the things as well we created proposals for. She's not here right now, but somebody who was here previously helped me make a proposal for a wellness program. That program was put together with lived and living experience folks and frontline folks on what a wellness collective would look like that would be most beneficial for the work. That proposal is still in the stages of trying to find somebody to house it. So the table, I found we gave feedback, we debriefed, we grieved together, and then it was always somebody going, okay, what now? What do we do about this? We're sitting in these feelings of yuck, and we need to do something productive in order to feel a little bit better or feel like things are moving along so that we can have hope again. So the table was really good at that and really good at steering each other to be able to think of those actionables. And then we put it in the hands of the leaders, and what they do with that is up to them, which is the disheartening part of putting all the work in.
So, as an interesting reaction to the wellness proposal, when it was brought to the leadership table, it was fascinating to watch the room. So many leaders were like, oh, we've tried that, it doesn't work. Or that would cost too much money. Or my favorite was, you're using peers. Where's the therapy? Where's the professionals who will help? So it was a lot of critique. There were a couple of us that have stepped forward and now are taking it offline and working together with that table to kind of look at where can we get funding and how can we support this, because there is so much value in what they're saying.
Right. My name is Ebenezer. Thanks for the presentation. So yeah, I think you talked about a couple of great things in terms of what management can do to prevent burnout and help with staffing sustainability. And I was wondering what I have observed. I've been in the field for close to 5 years now, and what I've observed over time is that some of the things that contribute to burnout also has to do with us hiring students. Most of the team members we work with are students, and some are working 2 to 3 jobs. And this is part of what is contributing to that burnout. And I think in your presentation, I think you all shared the theme that there are certain things that are out of our control. And I'm wondering, what are some of the things that frontline staff can do for themselves in order to help address this challenge? And I speak from a personal point of view. I know that cultivating my own resilience has helped me to continue working with the same organization for about 5 years. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Who do you want to answer that? Go for it. My personal experience, I suffered like incredible burnout, like dangerous burnout, and I leaned on my peers a lot, and a lot of them said, why are you trying to do this alone? It is collective care. It is not you care for yourself. And I had to learn that. Even though I practice it every single day, I do community care and collective care, but I didn't know how to do it for myself. So having a workplace that supported me, having peers that supported me, it is still a lot of work at the end of the day to take care of yourself, but learning what burnout looks like was something I also didn't know. I didn't know that I was burnt out for the longest time because I didn't know how to locate it. I didn't know it was like your sleep hygiene. I didn't know it was all of these feelings of not wanting to go to work or not being able to get out of bed. And that was, again, a lesson that I had to learn the hard way and build that resiliency. So what a workplace can do is have conversations about it, have compensation so you don't have to do 2 to 4 jobs. I'm still in that space of doing 2 to 4 jobs right now. It's incredibly stressful. And then having that peer support, having that time to be able to have those conversations, but also like reaching out to other sources. So like having benefits that are flexible enough so that you don't have to use one specific therapy center because it might not be therapy. Even having paid time off to like go to groups, so like going to NA and AA if that's something that is for your self-care.
Add that it has to be really intentional too on the worker's part. Like I did direct service for a really long time, and good for you for being at your same agency for 5 years. But it has to be really intentional, and so I think if it's safe to do so, to talk to your leadership and say, that's one of our interview questions actually, is like, how will I know that you're burning out? And I know when I was a direct service staff, and still, I know at our work we have cultural care and spiritual care. And so some of our community wellness team is here today, really thankful to them. So they hold sacred fires and things when people pass away. There's grief groups, there's also all sorts of things, but like take advantage of your benefits. If you have benefits, please use them. Please go for counseling. Please go for massage. Please go for the things that you need to do. But it really is about finding safe people to talk to as well.
Then if you're a leader, talk about how you went to counseling yesterday. Talk about how you went to your RMT yesterday. I talk about going to my kinesiologist. so that it's normalized. And I'm like, use your benefits. We pay for them. Go, go, go. And make it normal. Totally normal.
One last thing that just popped into my mind as the others were sharing, our organization in the last couple of years has started a couple of different employee circles. So one of them is an employee circle for folks with lived experience or living experience. We have another one for folks who identify as Indigenous, another one for folks who identify as Black. Each group encounters different things in the work that they do. And so having a space that's paid time for them to meet together and to be able to talk openly about the obstacles that they're facing, and then being able to bring those things to leadership and say, hey, so actually, we're experiencing a lot of racism from other racial groups in the work that we're doing from the front line. How do we navigate those things? Or then how do we as leadership support them to be able to get the things that they need? So those 3 employee circles have provided us with some feedback as to how to best support those groups uniquely. For us also as an organization, those had been minority groups that have slowly been building over time. So we really wanted to make sure that we were able to support those groups to have them grow for better representation.
I also think on like an organizational level, putting holistic care into policies is super important, and being able to practice those freely and within your policies, but like creating a culture where your staff want to participate in holistic care and what that looks like.
Hi, my question is for Chris. Earlier, you said something that really tickled my brain. You mentioned about like meshing retention with restorative justice. So I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about like where you started with that and what you've discovered so far.
We're just starting this, yeah. And what's tickling my brain, I love that you asked that question, is how do you bring restorative justice when you have sort of that hierarchical feeling, but also the colonization of HR in general and the need for compliance and the need for all these things. And then it's even the language. So what is progressive discipline? If someone does something wrong and they get a verbal warning, a written warning, none of that is restorative justice. So how do you pull that apart? That we're just about to start in our leadership team to bring people together and start learning how do we do this together. A few of us are reading a couple books. That's literally how early we are in this. But for me, that was the question is, it seems like it should be a fit, but it also goes against everything policy-wise and like, from the ESA standards. So yeah, as we learn together, we'll try and share with you. Thank you.
I just wanted to know the size of your organization. How large is your staff complement? And I also wondered if your environment was unionized.
We have 102 staff. We're an operating budget around 7 million, and we have 4 major teams in our organization. I didn't catch the second part of the question. Non-union, yeah, non-union.
For us, we have about 170 staff, and we are also non-unionized.
We have 20 staff and non-unionized as well.
Hi. I just have a question for, I'm sorry, I forget your name.
Jenny.
Jenny. You mentioned very briefly like a zero tolerance for gossip, and I find that's something that we struggle a lot with at my organization. And so I'm just wondering if you can talk about how you do manage it when it comes up.
First of all, we try to be proactive and talk about it a lot, like publicly, like that we want to create the same environment, just like we do with our clients, that we redirect. We can, we want to talk about what's going on. We don't rose-colored glasses, everything. But when we do have someone come forward and just be like, it's making me uncomfortable, or I feel that this person's always like venting to me and I can't do anything about it. When we have that conversation, we just ask, is there something that we've done that's made you feel not comfortable to come to us and talk to us about it, or somebody in your management team? And really looking at it, is it just a habit? Sometimes it becomes a habit, right? Like we're just kind of used to, again, it's that person who just becomes used to gossiping. So we just want to identify, where's the source of it? Is it something they feel it's out of their control? Has it just become a habit? It's something to talk about. We try to challenge people. what are really interesting things we can talk about other than people? And so in the same way we train of how to navigate those conversations with our clients, same with coworkers, and just really ask people to be introspective and say, where is it coming from? And how can we support you to move forward? Do we need to sit down with that person? How come you don't feel comfortable to talk with that person if this is bothering you? So again, putting the onus a little bit back on us, like where did we go wrong that you didn't feel comfortable to talk to us, and then move from there. And usually if someone's talked to you about it once, usually it's kind of like, okay, squash that. People aren't going to like you very much if you're, don't want to be around you if you're always sucking out their energy. So yeah.
This is just kind of an open question to whoever wants to answer it. A lot of the things that were mentioned today are things that are often outside of our control. So I'm curious about strategies to influence people in HR, to influence the finance department. Because I think about, pay, the idea of having a trainer and getting increased pay. Like, I already know my organization would say absolutely not. Ebenezer and I work for the, the same place, and they're great. They're doing a lot of things right, but they're not very flexible in terms of when we come with ideas for ways that are specific to our program and things that we need. It's sort of this, well, we need to be doing the same thing for all of our programs. And our organization has, I think, 17 different programs across our area. So, and different. We have food, housing, communities, and addictions. So yeah, just curious if you have any strategies for how to influence those decision makers for some of those things. I think the zero tolerance policy, even, like, I heard that and I was like, that's great. How? What does that mean? So yeah,
I'm sorry,
thank you.
I'm the decision maker in my organization.
And that's great for you.
Well, that's what I was going to say is I think the difficulty is if the decision maker is not bought in, it's very hard to push from below. So you could go back and say, we heard from someone who said cool things, you should call them. We'll give you our contact information. That's one way. The other thing I really recognized entering into our organization is there's the admin team, and then there's the rest of the organization. And the rest of the organization feels like they don't get them. And the admin team feels like they can't make any change because the service team doesn't get them. And so there could just be some team building. One of the things that's really important is the front line, training the admin people on how to be trauma-informed admin people. Flipping the paradigm and getting them involved, making them go out with your teams and meet the participants and be present. I make them go out on the outreach teams and experience it. Now, that's a whole different world. They've not had that training. There's fear. You need to do some work there. But those are a couple things off the top that are things I would think of.
We also, we were able to implement those things, actually the suggestion of our CEO at the time. So we had somebody new come in. We'd been through a regime, I shall say, of time that was a whole lot less willing to move forward, willing to look at things. And so in talking through the problems that we were encountering in retention, in like the burnout of the supervisor and manager, in trying to like train people over and over and over again, and then having the wrong people be there and all that time wasted, she was like, it would make way more sense to spend an extra couple dollars an hour to have one of your other team. Let's build up some leadership capacity, because there's always opportunities for growth and expansion, whether it's within our organization or maybe somewhere else, but within the sector, right? To build up that leadership capacity. And so I would say, again, similar, just bring back the information that you do have and keep advocating. And those couple of dollars really, like, do the math and be like, it's going to be, X number $100 for 3 months for this person. Like, come on, it's going to be worth it. And the payout is definitely there.
And I would also gently ask, like, what's the alternative? Like, we've been doing the same thing again and again. And also, I say this with love because we've been through many in this previously mentioned regime where we've come here and then been like, that was great. We can implement none of it because we're not allowed. And now we're in a space where we can. So I would say, A, there's always hope. B, I would say, like, yeah, do the math and like make it make sense for their brains, because they have a lot of dollars to think about and bottom lines. But then also gently asking, like, what's the alternative and how can we play it forward? I think, but that's a really good question, and I empathize with that position. And keep going. Like, your community is worth it, and take care of yourself.
And even just moving those couple of dollars, like for the position that's vacant. Well, I didn't pay anybody in that position for the last 3 months because we didn't have anyone there. Can't we use a few of those dollars to help bolster someone else?
We're just going to have one last question. And I want to remind everybody at 5:15, the reception opens on the 7th floor. And I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but on the back of your ID card, I guess, for lack of a better word, there's a free beverage ticket. So feel free to hand that into the server and they will check that off. And one last question, but I do want to thank the presenters. I mean, amazing presentations, well done. And this is such an important topic. So great work. So
Good job, you guys.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I'll make it very quick. I have a provincial team of quite a few members across our whole province. So what I'm hearing is like a lot of like that personal connection, meeting people where people are at. Do you have any suggestions for when that person's just on the other side of a computer screen and how to bring them in a better way?
Like Kristen had mentioned during our presentation, part of our onboarding process is for anyone, doesn't matter if you're going to be the one like balancing the books. When you first start, you're doing some like shadow shifts, a couple of hours. Oh, somebody that's only a virtual? Oh, a virtual employee. Okay, that is more challenging. I think including them in those team meetings where they're sharing from folks who are doing the direct work, I think that can help give stories, those significant participant accomplishments or yays, having those filter up so that they can get a better context, like, oh, somebody taking a shower is a big deal. Because if you're not part of this world, you're not going to understand that, right? So the more they hear those things, the more that will soak in, but it's going to be a slower osmosis process through the computer screen, I'm sure.
Have much to say because we all are in person, but one thing I know is all of the magic happens in the outside of meeting conversations. So virtually, it's really tough if you're scheduling meetings. You're going to need to also try and schedule networking time or like non-work discussion time or something like that where you can do some team building or connection that's deeper.
I was going to say we have one employee in Victoria, and it is really difficult. She does the frontline work, but I would agree. It's a little bit of like her manager will just like impromptu call her. They'll just FaceTime, have lunch together, that kind of thing, so that she really feels included. And yeah, she's in all our team meetings and everything, but I'll even just pop over, like if I can fly over and just spend a day with her, get to see the work that she does, let her know she's so a part of our team and we couldn't do it without her. So, but I think those impromptu calls, like having a real relationship would be helpful. But yeah, it's tough. Virtual, so tough for sure. Can I just add to whoever noted about the yays going up? He said it about for you. No, you learn from your team when they are sharing those things. And then we also noticed because for our social media team that doesn't get to see it, but I started learning so many things that my team were doing that I had no idea. Like they were doing hearing aid tests and getting seniors free hearing aids. And I was like, sorry, what? And then they also told me that we were doing listening stations. We had iPads everywhere and they could listen to music and podcasts and all different things in their own languages. And I was like, you need to tell me these cool things that you're doing. So I encourage you, if you're doing cool things, let your leadership know. And sometimes you feel like it's just part of your job or it's just something small, but it's amazing. And to celebrate it together, I just want to encourage you for that. Because as a leader, it like makes me so excited, but also there might be funding opportunities or great ways to share that with others and shared learning. So I encourage you to brag a little bit about yourself, about the work you're doing. So.